Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
Now, this episode needs a disclaimer. This subject could be seen as controversial, but we do not mean to exclude or cause discomfort to anyone. We're deciding to talk about this subject as a part of discussion simply because we think it should be brought up.
Right. So this episode is going to be about handicaps in RPGs. What we mean by handicaps is like wheelchairs, crippled, deaf, blind, or other. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And as you heard the disclosure at the start, this could be a controversial subject. And so we just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about playing handicaps as your character in role-playing games.
Yes.
The reason I brought this up is I watched a YouTube channel. Metatron, I think his name is. He's a historian and from Italy and does a lot of videos about history and weapons, and he talked a little bit about RPGs. And as I watched his episode, it just kind of dawned on me some of the things that he was talking about. And he was going off because of what's going on in 5e. Okay, what's happening, where you have wheelchairs or other things that your characters have, and they're adventuring, driving around in their wheelchair. And we just decided that we wanted to talk about this as having, would you as a player who has a real world handicap, would you want to play these things?
So specifically we're talking about handicap. Whatever it may be, whether it's physically disabled, whether you suffer from deafness, blindness, whether you're mute, whether you have a mental disability, or something of the sort. So the question comes up, do you create a scenario in your game where there is a playable character who has a certain disability, and how do they play in your game, in your campaign with that disability? The obvious, we don't mean to be specific so much about this, but the obvious question is mobility. Okay? A wheelchair, let's say, for instance.
Right. We see pictures in the new Pathfinder books and the new 5e books where they've got a player who's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Even miniatures now being produced where somebody can have a character that's in a wheelchair.
Okay. On the surface, that is completely, totally inclusion, and I love that. I love inclusion. Bring everybody in. Okay? Now, I've never DM'd, and so I'm going to have to defer to Delaney, who's DM'd quite a bit. However, in our adventures, we've had many adventures, having a character who basically is wheelchair bound basically puts you in a scenario where you have to work within that situation. We're talking about limiting about stairs, ramps, cobblestone streets,
rough
terrain, water, everything. So is there anything wrong with playing a character like that? No. But what kind of scenario do you put people in to where they need to get around? So one of the better examples I can give you, if anybody's old enough, they'll remember the TV show Ironside.
Yep, Ironside's great show.
And the thing about Ironside...
Raymond Burr.
Raymond Burr is Chief Ironside. So he was shot, paralyzed, yet that didn't stop him from investigating all these crimes. He had some help pushing him around and helping him up and down ramps. It was basically a mental game from then on. Not so much physical, but very mental. So can that work as an RPG strategy for a campaign? Yes, you absolutely can. Absolutely. As long as everybody's on the same page and that's what they want. Okay. If you're going into the Dragon's Lair, might be a little tough because of the ruggedness of the cave system, etc. How do you handle it?
Yeah, because then you start getting into a mobility
Yeah.
of how are you going to be fighting while moving your wheelchair. Now,
Yeah.
you could throw in a wheelchair that is minor magic. Maybe it's like Professor X's wheelchair that it just moves on its own, and you can give it a magical power that it can levitate mildly up steps or over rough terrain, but you don't put it into the context of, oh, you can levitate 20 feet up in the air and fly and zoom around. And
I mean, they already have the fly skill, so you could fly your wheelchair, around this area, which is fine. So that would kind of get rid of the mobility issue. That's not really so much of a problem, I guess, because you can always figure out a way to move around. What do you do with someone who wants to play a deaf character or a blind character or someone who's mute? So, I don't know.
I actually played a mute character once.
Okay.
It was a ranger who had, he was half elven and he had been enslaved and they cut out his tongue. So it was just part of the backstory. So when it came to communication, I would try to communicate by hand, or if I had something to write on, I would write it down.
I just had this mental flash of all like audioly handicapped people having their own D&D group where they're signing.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That would be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Like a whole group where all they do is they sign and then they roll and they're like, doing that, or they're really happy, or they're doing all kind of things. I just had this flash. Okay, is there anything wrong with that? Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not.
So the question would come up then, if you had a real-world handicap of being maybe in a wheelchair or being crippled in some fashion, or you were deaf, blind, would you, as that player, want to play that character or that type of character in the adventure? I personally would think, and this is just me, I can't think, I don't have any of these. I'm almost blind in many respects if I don't wear special contacts, but I would never want to play, I would want to free myself from that. But that's my personal.
Well, that's the whole thing about fantasy is I can, a person who maybe feels like they have mobility issues can be a fleet elven ranger who can move at 40, through the forest, and who has woodland stride and can just take it on. That's kind of cool.
Can do flips
and stuff. That's the thing about role playing and about fantasy is, would you want to delve into fantasy in that sense?
Yeah.
It's almost like, and this is sort of a bad analogy, but I'll just say it. It's like someone who maybe not be very good looking, wanting to play a character with a 24 charisma, and just who has the attention of everybody in the village and that sort of thing. That's what it is about role playing. You inhabit a character who may or may not have the same kind of characteristics you have.
There's times I've played female characters that are ultra feminine and very feminine looking, and I've also played a few that are very masculine looking, like myself.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite characters to play is a bard, because I cannot play a musical instrument for anything, nothing. I just do not have the physical ability to play a musical instrument. But my bards do. They're great. They play all kind of instruments, and they do performances. And I can kind of live vicariously through a bard who, enraptures people with their performance. I just love that.
Yeah. It's the escape of playing something that you're not.
Yeah. It's escapism. It truly is escapism. Is there anything wrong with that? No, not at all. As Tolkien, to paraphrase Tolkien, of course I write fantasy. Why wouldn't I write fantasy? I'm trying to give people escapism from the world they live in, from the humdrum, the doldrums they live in. I'm trying to give them a different world.
Live in.
Why would that be wrong?
Now, in a sci-fi setting, these things are far easier to overcome. I mean, okay, so in a fantasy you use magic.
Yeah.
Okay, but in a sci-fi you use technology.
Exactly.
It's like Geordi LaForge in Star Trek. He's got the visor. He can see.
Yeah, he can see.
The Bionic Man.
The Bionic Man.
He lost his eye. He lost an arm. He lost both of his legs.
Bionic abilities.
So now he's stronger than anybody. He can see miles away. He can run faster than.
Yep. I don't know, and I cannot remember specifically if it's in Fallout 4 or Fallout 3, but there's a I think it's in Fallout 4. There's a paladin of the
Brotherhood.
The Brotherhood of Steel, who cannot walk unless she's in a power armor suit, because she has no use of her legs. But the power armor suit.
Yeah, because the Neuralinks.
Yeah, the Neuralinks helps her walk, and she basically is wearing like a jumpsuit, and she's inside the power armor exoskeleton. Not with the armor on it, it's just the actual exoskeleton. If anybody's ever played Fallout 3 or 4, you know what I'm talking about. And she moves around like that. And I always thought that was really cool. It's like there is a piece of technology that could be used to give someone who can't walk mobility. They can run up and down stairs, they can do anything as long as they got power cores, as long as they're able to move around, they're able to get around and be mobile again. It's kind of cool.
Well, okay, so kind of more real world. Stephen Hawking.
Yes.
He's in a wheelchair. He's kind of just lumped over, but he can use the computer
to communicate.
Talk. Jason Beckham, who is a brilliant guitar player, who had ALS, and he still writes music on the computer.
That's right.
And talks.
I remember you talking about that person. Yeah,
So they have technology for some of this stuff. Or Captain Christopher Pike in Star Trek, the original Star Trek.
Yeah, he was in a wheelchair
in this box, and basically he could blink, he could hear, but he had to communicate through simple yes, no. Green, red.
I remember that.
Beeps,
Yeah. So I guess the reason we're doing this episode is, how do people feel about playing a character with an obvious handicap,
including it
in the game, or creating a space for people to express themselves through that, or how I mean, I hate to single anybody out and say, hey, all you handicapped folks, why don't you reply, tell us how you feel. I don't want to put it that way.
No.
But I would love to hear from some people who maybe have a disability in a certain way, but who finds expression in D&D or Pathfinder or whatever role-playing games, and how that gives that sort of release for you. And I would love to hear that.
Yeah, I know us as a game group, if we had somebody come in who was wheelchair bound, it would probably be tough because we play in a basement.
Well, no, not so tough. We'd play upstairs. We have the big table upstairs.
We could do it if we had to.
Yeah. And
it would mean a lot of changes. We wouldn't have the overheads. We wouldn't have the minis down here. But
it wouldn't be that bad. I think a lot of people would be kind of relieved because we wouldn't be playing in our cold basement anymore.
I like the cold basement.
We'd be playing upstairs in the dining room, which is fine with me. I wouldn't have much of a problem. We would just have to bring the computers up there and stuff like that, and that's fine. It would never be a sticking point for us, ever. If someone...
No.
There is a sticking...
It would be in changes for our group.
There is a sticking point getting into our house, because when they built our house, they did not make it very handicap friendly. We have steps to get into the house.
Whether you go in through the garage, or whether you go into the back door, whether you go in the front
door.
So
they would have to get up a few steps, so we'd have to help everybody get in.
Yeah.
Then that sort of sense. So... And our bathrooms are not very big. That'd be kind of tough.
No.
So, however, I do not think that anybody, for any reason like that, should ever be excluded from a game.
No, we would never exclude anybody.
Yeah.
If they were wheelchair bound, we would try and figure out something to include them.
Absolutely.
Because we've said this time and time again that we believe in inclusion.
Yeah.
In our group.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we're just kind of curious if you've ran into this, if you've seen this in the new Pathfinders and the new Dungeons and Dragon books and maybe some of the other RPGs. There are those people who grumble about it. I just kind of like, yeah, whatever.
Why would you grumble about it? Yeah. I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, these people are letting anybody in playing in D&D now. It's like, come on, man. you know, it's about inclusion. The game has always really been about inclusion. You know, and so what is your problem? You know, everybody is one car crash away from being, you know, having a lot of serious physical problems.
Yeah.
So, you know, a little empathy probably goes a long way when it comes around to a situation like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, we'd like to hear what you think on this subject.
Yeah.
And, you know, please don't be offended. We do not mean to offend anybody who is of this group out there in the RPG world. If you play, please let us know. We're kind of curious. If you've run into problems with it, how you play it, do you escape it? We'd just like to know.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for watching Wizards of the Tower.
Role play.
And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, spread the word, ring the bell, leave a comment, follow us, like I said, on Discord, send us an email if you need. All that information will be down in the description, so all you got to do is look in the description and the links will be there. And may all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling.
Thanks, folks. Cookie! French cookies.
Yep.
Covered in chocolate. Butter cookies covered in chocolate.
Yep.
So good.
Do you want me to do the opening?
Yeah, if you want to do the disclosure.
Sure. Three,
2, 1.